The Legend of Sunset Shimmer, Ocarina of Time. By Ganondorf 8. December 1, 2014. Chapter 12, An Ill-Fated Meeting and a Fated Meeting. Daring Do lead me over to her place of residence, and it looked like a house that one would see in the countryside back in the human world. It was certainly breathtaking to see on the outside, what with its chimney stack, wooden roof, and old oak door, but upon stepping inside, things were completely the opposite. There were books stacked everywhere, and scrolls were piled up onto a table that was cluttered with all kinds of knickknacks. Even her bed had a stack of books on top of it, which made me wonder if she even sleeps, and if she did, does she end up sleeping on some chairs? Perhaps the most striking features inside of her home were an assortment of tanks filled with water, with two of them having some unusual creatures swimming in them, and a large pool situated at the back which looked as though it was rather deep. These must be part of the research that she was conducting in order to determine what the water of Lake Hylia may be used for, but the tanks with creatures in them made me think she was a biologist instead of a scientist, which she claims to be true.
Sorry about the mess, but when you're heavily researching something, you tend to want to have your nose in as many books as possible. I guess maybe I went a little overboard and forgot to put some away. One of these days I'm going to be much more organized than this, but that's another thing to add onto my list. Right now I need to find the book on Zora script, and confirm that what the message said is accurate. I don't want you to be given one message and it turns out to be something else, as that would damage my credit as a scientist,"
said Daring Do.
"You certainly have a lot of tanks on the wall here,"
I commented.
"That's where I put the samples I take from the lake in order to determine what properties there are. Each of those tanks contains uncontaminated water, which I have to ensure by diluting the contents every 24 hours, otherwise who knows what might end up getting into them. As for the creatures inside of two of the tanks, they are specimens I discovered that were injured, and I'm keeping them here until they've made a complete recovery. Remember, I've learned that the waters of Lake Hylia have medicinal properties which is akin to healing, so in case you were curious, that's the reason why. Now please excuse me while I find that book on Zora script, as I know it's in here somewhere. Gah! I really need to be organized better. Such is the life of a scientist, where we struggle to find what we need, and have no problems finding what we don't need,"
said Daring Do. She started to feverishly search through the knickknacks cluttered about on the table in order to find what she wanted, and it left me feeling bewildered about the fact that she was going to so much trouble in order to prove that what she said the message on the note translated to was correct. I mean, I believe she was telling the truth, but I felt that she doubted herself, and wanted to make sure that she was right. I doubt myself all the time and usually don't think to want to prove myself right or wrong. I could learn a thing or two from Daring Do, it seems.
Aha! I finally found the book on Zora script, and it was lying underneath the rest of the stack. "How long will it take you to confirm the message's accuracy?"
I asked.
"It should take me a few moments to look up the words." "And finished," replied Daring Do. "That was fast," I said. "It was a short message which went straight to the point. If it had been something with more depth to it, it would have taken me several hours to comb through the book to see the authenticity was. What I said the message translates into matches the descriptions in my book, which means Princess Ruto is indeed trapped inside of Lord Jabu Jabu. Not sure how you plan on getting her out of such a predicament, but at least you have your proof. I doubt that King Zora will deny your claim of Ganondorf's involvement in the disappearance, as this Zora script is 100% genuine," said Daring Do. So I need to take this bottle with the message to King Zora and have him read it? That actually sounds a lot simpler than I thought, although this does mean that I'll need to swim through the shortcut in order to get back to Zora's domain, otherwise going the long way around will take way too long. Ganondorf is meeting with the King of Hyrule at some point today, and I need to get the final spiritual stone from the Zoras and return to Hyrule Castle in order to prevent him from getting his hands on the Triforce,
I said.
It sounds to me that you are involved in quite a serious situation if the fate of the entire kingdom is at stake. Here, take the message in the bottle, and deliver it to King Zora right away so that you can get that final spiritual stone. That stone is one of 4 keys needed to open the door within the Temple of Time that leads to the location of the Triforce,
said Daringdo.
You know about the legend? I thought only the royal family and the great Deku tree were aware of it,
I said.
You'd be surprised as to what the ancient ancestors of the Hylians wrote in these books about the legend. According to the legend, the 3 spiritual stones and the secret treasure of the royal family open the door inside of the temple, but it is not the true door that opens the way to the Triforce. There is one other key that is involved to access the golden power, but what that final key is something that no one seems to know. In any case, I've kept you here long enough as it is. Get going and save the world, and if you ever find yourself this way again, be sure to stop on by as I could do with the company,
said Daringdo. I thanked her for all of her help and left her home in order to set out for the shortcut back to Zora's domain. That was when I realized that she told me something about the Triforce legend that not even Twilight herself told me, and that was the final key to the sacred realm. I wonder what kind of key it was, and how come no one seems to know that it even exists. As questions began to race through my mind with no answers attached to them, I reached the location of the shortcut, and dove into the water and used it to make my way back to the domain, and that was when Spike decided to say something.
I have a question for you, Sunset Shimmer,
he began.
What kind of question?
I asked.
Back in this human world you say you came from. Is it really true that you were once someone who was corrupted?
Asked Spike.
It's something that I have to live with every day. I'm a perfect example of a person who started off with a lot of promise, but ended up losing her way because of being corrupted by a vision of myself in the future. What I saw was myself as a powerful princess with all of Equestria bowing down before my hooves, and it was something I wanted to strive for. I was tempted by power and it caused my life to spiral out of control, and I became a heartless she-demon. Quite literally, as I used the power of the element of magic to become a monster. I suppose you could say that I am like Ganondorf in that all I cared about was gaining power, and destroying anything that got in the way of my desire.
I replied.
If you're wondering why I suddenly brought this up, it's because Ganondorf is on his way to Hyrule Castle in his attempt to conquer the kingdom, and recalling all those times where you said that you aren't the hero and think you are made me wonder if you might end up falling back under the sway of darkness. I mean, you were tempted once and look what became of you, yet you managed to change things for the better. However, what's to stop you from falling under the same temptation again?
Asked Spike.
Nothing. While I may have changed, my troubled past still continues to haunt me to no end, and not a day goes by that I am reminded of the kind of person I used to be. It sickens me to my stomach knowing that I was such a cruel person. Ganondorf may be able to detect the taint of darkness that plagues me so, and may try to take advantage of it. I hope that doesn't end up being the case, but it's something that is certainly a possibility.
I replied.
Well, if that happens then I will either do one of 2 things for you. The first thing would be to do everything in my power to get you to snap out of it, and there is no way I would allow you to fall to the temptations of evil no matter what you've done in the past. The other thing would be to join you in the darkness if you've become far too gone to save. I've been your partner since the start of this journey, and I have no plans to abandon you no matter what. It's because I'm not just your partner, but also your friend,"
said Spike.
"That's so sweet of you to say, so does that mean you believe my story?"
I asked.
"I'm still working on that,"
replied Spike.
"Good enough for me, so let's get going and see King Zora so that we can finally make some progress." Without wasting any time, I swam all the way to the shore, and ran up to the throne room of King Zora, and he was still as gloomy as he was before, although he may be looking even worse since I last saw him. As soon as he saw that I was approaching him, he heaved a heavy sigh before addressing me. "Oh, so you have returned? I heard from the Zora who runs the high diving game that after you completed the challenge, you collapsed on the shore, and remained there for the entire night. I must apologize if none of my people offered to give you a more adequate place to sleep. I take it that you have come here in order to repeat your claims that my daughter's disappearance has to do with Ganondorf?"
asked Hondo Flanks.
"It does, Your Majesty," I replied. "As I mentioned to you before, without proof of such a claim, I cannot do anything for you,"
said Hondo Flanks.
"But this time I do have proof, and it's right here in this bottle which originally came from Zora's fountain. Here, Your Majesty, you might want to take a good look at this note, for it may give you the answers you seek,"
I said. I then walked around the corner to where he was sitting, and handed over the note to him before making my way back to the pedestal. The king was gracious enough to wait for me to make it back so that I could watch his reactions.
"What's this? A note from Princess Ruto? Let me see what it says here. She is inside Lord Jabu Jabu? That's absurd. Our great deity would never swallow my precious daughter, but then what you say about Ganondorf does make sense now that you have presented me this. I am most sorry for not believing in your claims, Sunset Shimmer, but this note is the proof I need to confirm your story. Ever since Ganondorf left Zora's domain, Lord Jabu Jabu has been a little green around the gills lately, but I never realized it before until now,"
said Hondo Flanks.
"Who is Lord Jabu Jabu?"
I asked.
"He is the patron deity of the Zoras who swims in Zora's fountain, which resides behind my throne room. Only my daughter and I are permitted to enter this sacred place, but now I grant you permission to enter the fountain, and rescue Princess Ruto. I shall keep this note, and you can keep the bottle that it was located in. Before you depart for Zora's fountain, there is something important that you must know. Lord Jabu Jabu will not allow you to enter him unless you give him the appropriate offering,"
replied Hondo Flanks.
"What kind of offering do I need?"
I asked.
"Our legend states that if one were to feed a fish to Lord Jabu Jabu, that would make the person very happy. You can purchase a fish at the Zora shop, which is on the lowest level of the domain, but it would cost you 200 rupees, as the owner sells the best quality of fish that swim about the waters here. Of course, any kind of fish will do to appease our deity, so you could always capture a fish in that bottle of yours and offer it to Lord Jabu Jabu. Allow me to slide aside so that you may access Zora's fountain and complete the task that is before you. Do know that successfully rescuing my daughter will grant you the spiritual stone that you seek, and also know that a great fairy resides somewhere in the fountain. Be sure to find her, for I am sure that she will aid you on your quest. Please find my dear Princess Ruto immediately. Zora,"
replied Hondo Flanks. He then began to shift his bulky form to the left in what sounded like squishing, which looked rather awkward, but at last I was making progress. Of course I had to go and collect a fish, otherwise I'll have to backtrack a little bit, which would just waste what precious time I had. That then made me think about what was happening at Hyrule Castle at this very moment, because an ill-fated meeting was about to take place.
Are you sure that this is a wise decision, Captain? We need as many able bodies as possible when the King of the Gerudo shows up. I don't want to have a repeat of what happened here at the gates last time, where some of the guard ended up in a quarrel with those Gerudo,"
replied Shining Armor.
"But Madame Impa informed us that Lord Ganondorf is coming here on his own without any kind of entourage accompanying him. Surely there is no need for the increase in security when we can use the extra soldiers to help assist in the repairs of Kakariko Village. I'm not sure how the problem with the Gorons was resolved, as no one from the castle was sent there to handle the situation. The villagers say that a royal messenger was able to appease the Goron chieftain, and saved her people from starving to death, but I don't recall His Majesty sending out a messenger to resolve the issue. Still, I can't believe that a simple messenger was able to do something that Hyrule Castle's finest weren't able to accomplish,"
said Shining Armor.
"What was this messenger like, Captain?" "The villagers say that she was dressed in a green tunic. I don't recall His Majesty ever hiring someone like that,"
replied Shining Armor.
"Is it because of Ganondorf? There's something about him that I just don't trust, and I got that from the last meeting he had with the king. When I questioned his actions at the time, the way he spoke to me was like he wanted to kill me there and then for speaking out like that. If not for the presence of His Majesty, my life would have probably ended there. Like Madame Impa, I too believe that His Majesty is making a mistake when it comes to dealing with the King of the Gerudo. I know that forging an alliance with that man would finally unite all of Hyrule together under one banner, and fulfill the wishes of the king, but who is to say that Ganondorf will agree to anything? He could simply reject the alliance and instead create a new one which suits his needs, or perhaps even worse than that,"
replied Shining Armor.
"You believe that he would murder the king? That's a little too much thinking there, Captain." "Perhaps, but that's the reason why I wanted the increase in security despite the protests of Madame Impa. While she and I both believe that Ganondorf is not to be trusted, our actions and ways of thinking make us complete opposites. I may be a stickler for wanting to maintain order by overdoing things, but I pledged my loyalty to His Majesty, and I will die before I allow any harm to befall him,"
said Shining Armor.
"Such bold words could very well be your last ones,"
said Tyrek as he arrived at the castle gates riding on his nightmare horse. His choice of words didn't settle very well with Shining Armor, and he responded by gritting his teeth and giving the Gerudo King a stern look. Tyrek decided to respond to this expression with kinder words so as to defuse the situation.
"Of course, that is figuratively speaking, for the King of Hyrule would be devastated if something were to happen to his captain. I apologize if my words weren't to your liking. I have noticed that the security around the castle is much stronger than it was the last time, but I suppose that you have your reasons for doing so. None of my fellow Gerudo have accompanied me today, for I have commanded them to remain at the Gerudo's fortress until this meeting has been taken care of. If it would make you feel any better, I have come here unarmed, for I am here in the name of peace." "Then what is with that sword attached to your leg?"
asked Shining Armor.
"Oh, this? It is a mere dagger which I use for hunting whenever I am in the mood, which is very rare due to there being not much in the way of game in Hyrule. For the most part, it merely serves as a small accessory with no ideal function." Your name is Shining Armor, correct? Such a young man in the position of captain of the Hylian Royal Guard, and one who has the respect of the king and his subjects. Your parents must be so proud of your achievements thus far, and I will admit that you have impressed even the likes of me,"
replied Tyrek.
"Flattery won't do you any good,"
said Shining Armor.
"No, I suppose it would not,"
said Tyrek.
"Well, since you've arrived here at the gates, you may proceed to the other gates where His Majesty will greet you. I shall accompany you so that I may announce you as per royal protocol when dignitaries visit,"
said Shining Armor.
"By all means lead the way, dear Captain, so that I may grace the king with my presence. Do you think that I am oblivious to the fact that you suspect that I have come here to claim this kingdom as my own? You may be young Shining Armor, but you are also gifted with a foresight for understanding the inner workings of a man. A shame that you must die, for you cannot be allowed to live. I'll enjoy killing you and gut apart your lifeless corpse just as soon as I have finished with your precious king, and of course you have all that energy inside of you which will be succulent to me,"
said Tyrek. Shining Armor then lead him all the way through the large garden in front of the castle before soon stopping at the other gate where the King of Hyrule was awaiting on the other side.
"Presenting Ganondorf, King of the Gerudo,"
announced Shining Armor much to his chagrin.
"I am pleased that you were able to come sooner than expected,"
said the king.
"The pleasure is indeed mine, Your Majesty, but why choose to have the meeting today instead of tomorrow as we had originally planned? It wouldn't have bothered me too much if I were to have come here the next day,"
said Tyrek.
"I know, but I want this alliance to be created as soon as possible, which is why I insisted that the meeting be held today. You could say that I am being a little on the impulsive side, but I feel that this day will surely be one that will change Hyrule for the better. Shining Armor? Would you go and summon my daughter and her attendant, and ask them to meet Ganondorf and myself in the throne room, so that we may get this meeting underway?"
asked the king.
"As you command, Your Majesty,"
replied Shining Armor as he turned and started to walk into the castle.
"One of my other guards will gladly tend to your horse Ganondorf while we shall proceed to the throne room,"
said the king.
"If it would be okay with you, Your Majesty, I would prefer to know where my horse is going to be located. I do have this thing about knowing where he is to be at all times, as I do worry for his safety even in a place as safe as Hyrule Castle,"
said Tyrek.
"Yes, of course. I'll make the necessary arrangements,"
said the king.
"You are most gracious, Your Majesty, and completely naive for believing such dribble as that.
You are so obsessed with wanting to forge this alliance of yours, that you are blind to everything else around you. Such a pitiful excuse for a king who fails to see the truth for what it is, and instead believes in a truth that is nothing more than a mere fantasy."
"I'm most glad that you decided to have this sham of a meeting held sooner rather than later, for it means my desire will come true a lot quicker, and your death will be that much faster. All I need to do now is bide my time, and wait for this idiot of a monarch to share with me the secrets of the Door of Time. As for your precious Zelda, she will kneel before her new king soon enough along with that attendant of hers, or both shall die at my hands. So by all means lead the way to the throne room,"
said Tyrek.
"So this is Zora's fountain?" I asked as Spike and I entered the area, and saw that it consisted of a giant lake with a massive cave entrance far to the left, and a small piece of land far off in the distance. In front of us was a raised platform with an unusual creature lounging at the end of it. This must be Lord Jabu Jabu, the deity of the Zoras, and while I wasn't expecting him to look the way he does, I have to admit that he is pretty cool looking. Aside from him and the cave entrance, there was nothing else worth noting, at least from my perspective. The lake that comprises the majority of the area is even deeper than that of Lake Hylia, so no amount of diving will enable you to get to the very bottom if you were willing to go that far to begin with. As for Lord Jabu Jabu, he just swims about here at his own leisure without having to worry about a thing in the world, but right now he looks as though he isn't in the mood for swimming. In fact, he just floats there like he was beached or something. I feel bad for him because of what Ganondorf did to him. As for what King Zora said about there being a great fairy in Zora's fountain, I do detect a strong magical presence that belongs to her, but I'm not entirely sure where it's coming from. We can deal with that later, as right now our main priority is getting inside of that fish,"
replied Spike.
"Fish? I wouldn't exactly call him that,"
I said.
"Oh? And what would you call him then?"
asked Spike.
"Probably a cross between a fish and some kind of giant eel." "Okay. So he's more like a giant fish than anything else." Once again, Spike, your smugness befalls you, but then you enjoy being sarcastic,"
I replied.
"I just like to have a little bit of fun with you, but I don't mean to insult you, Sunset Shimmer. By the way, do you have that fish ready to go?"
asked Spike.
"It's right here and I can't wait to use it, if only to never see it again. I can't believe that it took me such a long time just to try and scoop one up, and those moments where I fell face first into the water when I was so close to getting one are ones that I would rather soon forget. It's a good thing that none of the Zoras saw me make an embarrassment of myself, as I doubt that I'd be able to live it down. I'll admit that it was fun splashing about like that, as I did need to have a shower of sorts since I haven't taken one since starting this journey, and the water in the domain sure has some impressive healing properties. According to King Zora, all we have to do is just place the fish in front of Lord Jabu Jabu, and wait to see what happens next. I have this feeling that something weird is going to happen,"
I replied.
"Don't you mean bad?"
asked Spike.
"No, just weird,"
I replied. Walking up to Lord Jabu Jabu by wading through the water wasn't all that strange, but upon approaching him, he just stared at me with his beady little eyes as though he was waiting for me to do something. Those eyes of his did make me feel uneasy for a few moments, but I quickly overcame my nerves and took the fish of the bottle and placed it in front of him. I don't know if he was happy, sad, or whatever, but at first it looked like he wasn't willing to accept the offering. Then he suddenly opened up his mouth and sucked the fish in, and I figured he was satisfied and would grant me access to his inside. That was when he decided to suck me into his mouth as well, which completely caught me by surprise. As the suction enveloped me, I struggled to break free only to lose my footing and finding myself plunging headfirst into the mouth of this giant fish-like creature, and ending up blacking out.
"Sunset Shimmer? Are you okay?"
asked Spike.
"I've had better days, that's for sure, but where exactly are we?"
I asked.
"We're inside Lord Jabu Jabu, as his teeth are right behind us, and the back of his throat is just ahead of us. I'm not sure what to make of this place, as I've never been inside the belly of a living creature before. It looks like we're free to leave any time, so don't think that we're trapped in here for the rest of our lives. You do have to wonder where the Zora princess ended up when she was swallowed by this guy,"
replied Spike.
"That's right. Princess Ruto is somewhere inside and we need to make sure that she's safe,"
I said.
"Is it just me, or are these walls vibrating?"
asked Spike.
"We are inside of a giant fish after all, so what we're seeing are his veins and muscles contracting back and forth. It does look very unpleasant, that's for sure, but we need to focus on the task at hand, and not freak out over what we're looking at,
I replied. I took a few steps forward to begin the exploration, and an octo-rock popped up from a small body of water, and proceeded to fire a rock at me. Luckily, I was fast enough to take out my shield and bounce the rock back and defeating it instantly.
Well, we now know that there are monsters swarming about in here, but I suspect that octo-rocks will be the least of our worries.
After walking a few more steps, I stopped when I noticed some kind of strange bump sticking out from the ceiling.
Now what do you suppose that is? It looks like some kind of switch, although it's hard to say for certain, but if you hit it with the fairy slingshot, it might activate and remove that strange mass covering up what looks to be a door,
replied Spike. I'm not expert when it came to anatomy, but anything was worth a try in order to find Princess Ruto, so I took out the fairy slingshot, and fired a Deku seed at the switch, which caused the mass to disappear.
Opening the door felt like going through some kind of opening in the body's mechanism, and the next room consisted of a small pathway overlooking a long drop with a strange jellyfish floating in the distance. That creature is called a biri, and if you touch it, you'll get electrocuted, which also happens when you destroy it. It's immune to all forms of magic, and not even a Deku seed will inflict any damage onto it. Unless you have something that can destroy it from a distance that isn't a projectile, all you can do is run away from it. Yeah, being electrocuted is not my idea of fun,
I said, and so I quickly ran past the biri in order to reach the other side of the room, but along the way I noticed a blue bump on a ledge which had me thinking that maybe it was possible to be able to reach it. Upon going into the next room, the sounds of monsters could be heard everywhere, and the pulsating innards of Lord Jabu Jabu were pretty evident.
This looks to be the main chamber of the fish, but who can be certain? Without a map to figure out exactly where we are, all I can do for you is take a guess and hope that it's the right one. You should be careful around here, Sunset Shimmer, as I can see strange holes on the floor, and I'd rather not figure out where they go. There are more biri in this room, so avoid them just like the other one,
said Spike.
Doing that could be a problem as they could potentially get in the way, I said. Good point, so you might want to consider taking a more careful approach than simply running away, said Spike. Hello? Is someone there?
A voice suddenly came out of nowhere, and it was one that I recognized instantly, which was a sigh of relief, as it meant that all of my friends have finally been accounted for in this world. I walked forward a few steps in order to see where she was, and sure enough there was Rarity standing in front of one of those holes. She was wearing an elegant shimmering light blue dress, but what surprised me was that Rarity wasn't complaining about her dress getting dirty in a place like this.
You? Who are you, and how did you end up in here? Rarity!
I exclaimed.
I beg your pardon? My name is Princess Ruto, and I am the daughter of King Zora, who rules over the waters of Hyrule. I must admit though that the name Rarity does have a certain sense of flair about it, as I do consider myself to be priceless. As I was saying just now, what are you doing in here?
Asked Rarity.
My name is Sunset Shimmer and I came here to rescue you, I replied. So you managed to find the message in the bottle which I managed to cast outside of Lord Jabu Jabu? I was honestly expecting a fellow Zora to have discovered it in the end, but I suppose that you will do just as well. If there was anyone that I didn't want to find that bottle, it would be my father, because he would have thrown himself into a frenzied panic. While I love him so much, sometimes he can be rather overprotective, and that doesn't suit me well at all, as I enjoy having some freedom in my life. At least he isn't aware that I got trapped in here,
said Rarity.
About that,
I began.
You mean, my father knows?
asked Rarity.
I had to show him the note, otherwise I couldn't gain access to Zora's fountain, and this meeting of ours wouldn't even be taking place. I told your father that the reason behind your disappearance had to do with a man named Ganondorf who came here looking for the spiritual stone of water. He was denied, and then he did something to your deity which has brought about this entire mess. King Zora didn't believe my claims, so I had to show him proof, which was the note that you wrote. I'm sorry if this is something you didn't want your father to know, but you should be aware that only I was sent here to help you,
I replied.
Yes, that does explain everything in a nutshell. I was wondering why that Gerudo suddenly came here 1 week ago, and when I asked my father about it, he refused to comment, saying that he didn't want any of his people to get involved in a potential political struggle. Also, I forgive you for your boo-boo regarding my father, as you had no other choice but to show him the note. By the way, how do you know about the spiritual stone?
Asked Rarity.
I came here on behalf of Princess Zelda to acquire it in order to prevent Ganondorf from claiming the Triforce,
I replied.
The Triforce? If that's the case, then we certainly can't have that now, can we? If you were thinking of acquiring the spiritual stone from my father, then you would have been out of luck, as it is not his to give away however he sees fit. That stone was passed down from my mother to me, and so it is my right to determine who shall receive it. If you want it, then I need you to help me find it inside Lord Jabu Jabu. You see, when I was feeding him about a week ago, just after Ganondorf left, he suddenly swallowed me for no reason at all, and the surprise it gave me caused me to drop the stone somewhere in here. Ever since then, I've been trying to locate it, and even sent out that message in the hopes that someone would come and give me a hand. Until I find my precious stone, I refuse to leave Lord Jabu Jabu's belly,
said Rarity.
So you want me to help you?
I asked.
If you would be so gracious,
replied Rarity. This was certainly an awkward position I found myself in. If I wanted to get the spiritual stone and save Hyrule, I had to help find it with Rarity, who seems very eager to locate it at any cost. The problem was that she had been searching in here for a week with no result, so does that mean it will take just as long, or even half the time with two of us looking? Time was already against me, and this was just adding fuel to the fire. Sigh, I had no other choice but to nod my head in agreement, which certainly made her happy as she clasped her hands with excitement.
Splendid! Now please do follow me so that we may begin the search.
Rarity then turned around and began to walk forward, but apparently she forgot about the hole that was behind her, and she ended up falling into it and into the room below.
Oh no! Rarity! Hold on, I'm coming!
I shouted as I followed her into the hole, which probably wasn't my brightest notion. I had no idea just how far down I was going to fall, but somehow my rear cushioned my landing, so I guess I should be thankful. This lower room certainly had its high places, what with some ledges that were much too high for me to reach, and of course there were more of those biri floating around, which wasn't to my liking, as I had no means of getting by them.
Are you okay, darling?
Asked Rarity.
I wasn't expecting that to be such a huge fall,
I replied.
While I do appreciate the effort you put in just to get down here and help, I'm afraid that it was for nothing, because as you can see, I am perfectly fine. This is nothing new though, as I'm used to making my way around here. Ever since I was little, I've been going in and out of Lord Jabu Jabu, as it's my official duty to prepare his meals morning and night, but he is very different now than he used to be, and I don't just refer to the fact that he swallowed me. Those strange jellyfish aren't the only problems in here, for there are those strange holes, and these weird electrical currents which seem to be blocking off certain places. I'm hoping that you will be able to get us through these chambers safely, as traversing them won't be easy,"
said Rarity.
"My magic and fairy slingshot won't have much of an effect unless I can get my hands on something that can strike at a distance, but isn't a projectile,"
I said.
"You know, I do seem to recall there being an item that does exactly what you describe located somewhere near the back of Lord Jabu Jabu's belly."
"How it ended up there is a mystery, but it just could be the thing you need to." "Did you just say that you are able to use magic? What a coincidence this is, as I am able to use magic as well."
"From an early age, I have been able to use magic with the best of them, but no one seemed to know where I got the talent from, as no one in my family's history was adept at the magical arts. Even my father was surprised at this talent, and assumed that I had been blessed with a rare gift,"
said Rarity.
"You and I aren't the only ones that can use magic,"
I began.
"Whatever do you mean?"
asked Rarity.
"There are several others throughout Hyrule who are able to use this special kind of magic, and while they may not understand why they can use it, such magic isn't even from this world. Normally, I would take the time to explain this all to someone who resembles a friend or foe I've met where I'm really from, but time is a commodity that I just don't have right now because of Ganondorf's impending conquest. So I pretty much have to give you the quick version of it, and hope that it will sink in for you." "Ahem. You are from the human world, where you acquired equestrian magic from a princess pony, from a world called Equestria, which is where I am originally from, but now live in the human world with you and the rest of our friends except for Princess Twilight Sparkle,"
I replied. That was probably the fastest version that I have mentioned yet, but it had to be this way because I had no time to go into a full explanation, or even argue with Rarity on the matter. Her expression though was one of complete shock as she was trying to process this sudden burst of information into her head.
"Now wait just a minute,"
she shouted.
"What is it?"
I asked.
"We're not going anywhere until you tell me exactly what you're talking about regarding this equestrian magic. If you don't explain this to me right now, you will never get your hands on the spiritual stone, and this world will sadly fall to ruin at the hands of Ganondorf,"
replied Rarity.
"Are you serious?"
I asked.
"I'm always serious when it comes to important matters,"
replied Rarity. I found myself trapped in a situation that I wasn't even expecting, so how exactly am I going to explain this knowing that the clock is ticking? To be continued. Chapter 13, In the Belly of the Fish.